He has taught in universities and educational institutions around the globe in the US, Canada, Germany, China, and even Australia. Dr. Mir is also extremely well versed in the field of literature. Not only has he authored several books and academic papers in English, but he has also written and spoken extensively on Urdu poetry. He is a talented screenplay writer and lyricist, with the movies he has worked on having been screened at various prestigious events, such as the Cannes Film Festival and the Toronto International Film Festival. Today, Dr. Mir is going to give us a presentation on the importance of communication skills and how we can hone them. Good communication skills, personally, I believe that, especially in the 21st century, have become an indispensable part of everyone's lives. Nowadays, rather than some grades on a report card, universities and companies alike are more interested in the applicants' communication skills, their eloquence, their body language, the way they present themselves. And both in your public and private life, communication skills shape your very personality. It helps you exude an aura of confidence, and people naturally gravitate towards persons who can carry themselves, both verbally and non-verbally. I have been very fortunate to have Dr. Mir as my personal mentor. Right from our very first call back in February, he has helped me realize that there's always more to learn, regardless of what the topic at hand is. And this is especially true when it comes to communication. When you converse with Professor Mir, you just know that he has interacted with people from various walks of life. And he never holds back from imparting tips and tricks that will become invaluable to the listener. Like for over the duration of our various sessions, I have brought up various hypothetical situations and asked how I could go about dealing with them. And sir never fails to reply with the most brilliant solutions, all the while adding more layers to the situation that I never even thought of. So when I saw the message in the WhatsApp group yesterday that he will be the one who's holding the presentation today, I low-key honestly became ecstatic. Looking forward to the presentation, sir.
Thank you, Aman. And hello, everybody, and thank you for being here. As you know, I'm here to talk to you about communication skills. And while I do know a little bit about that, I don't want to talk to you as an expert, but more as an elder. So I'm not going to use any slides or a prepared lecture. I just want you to think of me as a well-wisher who has some thoughts and some ideas, as somebody who is invested in your success and wants to share a few things that have shown to be useful to me over time. I hope you have been attending these sessions and meeting with your mentors and finding the experience useful. Thank you, Eman, for that introduction. It has been a pleasure working with you. And the other mentors tell me that the rest of you are wonderful too. I want to add that मेरा ताल्लुक हैदराबाद से है, वहीं मैं पैदा हुआ, वहीं मैं बड़ा हुआ, वहीं मेरी तरबियत हुई। पुराने शहर की गलियों से मेरा बड़ा गहरा रिश्ता है, और ये कोविड की वबा से पहले मैं साल के 4 महीने वहीं गुजारा करता था. So in many ways, I have some sort of a background that I share with you, at least with those of you who come from Hyderabad. I know that not all of us are from Hyderabad. यहाँ पे कई लोग नॉर्थ इंडिया से भी हैं. तो मेरी मादरी ज़बान हैदराबादी या दक्कनी उर्दू है, but I'm making an effort to speak a more neutral Urdu. But if I can address my Hyderabadi crowd for a second, Lucknow wale, as you might know, बहुत tight Urdu बोलते, and they're very picky about it. तो एक छोटा सा किस्सा ये है कि इत्तेफाक से 2 साल पहले न्यूयॉर्क में मेरी मुलाकात अजरा मोहिउद्दीन साहिबा से हुई. She is the wife of Zia Mohiuddin, the famous Pakistani British actor, who is best known for his fabulous recitations of Urdu poetry and prose. और वो सुना रही थी कि apparently she met Zia Muhyiddin at a party, और जाने क्या तूने कही, जाने क्या मैंने सुनी, बात कुछ बन ही गई। लेकिन at the end of the evening, जब जनाब ने उनसे कहा कि मैं आपको कहीं छोड़ दूं, तो she apparently replied कि छोड़े तो कबूतर जाते हैं, आप मुझे पहुंचा जरूर सकते हैं। तो अपने हैदराबादियों को ऐसे नखरे नहीं हैं। खाफ और खे में है क्या फर्क, हमें क्या मालूम, हम ज़बां अपनी चलाने को ज़बां कहते हैं। एक और किस्सा मैं सुनाना चाह रहा हूँ आपको कि हमारे एक रिश्तेदार थे जो लखनऊ से हैदराबाद आए थे। एक दिन वो किसी अपने अजीज से मिलने गए और लौट कर आए तो बड़े खफा थे। कहने लगे कि मैं अपने दोस्त के यहाँ गया, उनके साहिबजादे बाहर गश्त लगा रहे थे, तो मैंने उनसे पूछा, बेटा आप यहाँ बाहर क्यों हो? तो उसने मुझे जवाब दिया, चुप। तो बड़ा बदतमीज लड़का था। तो वी हैड टू एक्सप्लेन टू हिम दैट chup in Hyderabad doesn't mean shut up, but is short for chupkeich or just like that. तो मैं ये कहानियां टाइम पास करने नहीं सुना रहा हूं. I just want to point out that communication is a very complex process which relies upon a variety of shared symbols, histories, experiences, in order to transfer information accurately. And communication is not merely about transferring information, but about actually creating meaning. And I'll try to explain that to you in a second. So our languages, as we know, are made up of symbols that are not neutral, but are imbued with a lot of power. For example, when we use the male pronoun he, him, or his as the default to refer to both sexes, male and female, we are using a form of language that has originated in a sexist society, which privileges men over women. Similarly, when we use terms like chairman, policeman, manpower, man-made, we are reinforcing stereotypes about gender roles in society. So the words that we use or the words that we deploy to communicate carry specific meanings depending upon the context, right? Which is why my Lucknow Rishtedar misinterpreted a simple word like chup and took affront at it. If you don't know the context, you don't understand the meanings of words. Let me give you an example. You might have heard the term dog whistle, which is the use of coded or suggestive language to send a message to a selected audience while being able to deny that you said anything controversial. You know, dogs can hear sound at a pitch that the human ear cannot. So the term dog whistle is used to refer to these kinds of coded messages. So for example, in America, politicians who say that they support family values are basically telling their audience that they plan to promote policies that are conducive to a particular kind of conservative Christian agenda. You cannot say that in plain language, so you have to use codes. Our former president Donald Trump often used to talk about putting America first. Yeah, that was his slogan, America first. People who knew that the phrase that particular phrase had originated with the racist organization, the KKK, recognized that he was offering tacit support of white supremacy. He didn't need to say, I believe in white supremacy or I support white supremacy, since that is not socially acceptable. So he used a code instead. Yeah, and I'm sure you can offer plenty of examples yourself of similar phrases used in your part of the world. Okay, so that's the first point I wanted to make, that communication is not simply about using words to say what you mean. Communication is actually a far more complex process of both information transfer and meaning creation that relies on mutually understood symbols and contexts. And no wonder it is always such a fraught process. As you no doubt know, even the most intimate of relationships are not safe from communication problems. As is often said, the single biggest issue in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. तो आप सोच रहे हैं कि मैंने कह दिया और उसने समझ लिया, but this is often not the case. Ironically, words are often the source of misunderstandings. You will often hear that the ability to communicate and connect effectively is the most crucial skill you need in order to succeed in life. Now, that may be overstating it a bit, but the fact of the matter is that communication skills play a very, very important role in our personal and professional lives. I can't possibly teach you how to become better communicators in one session, but I don't need to. The internet is full of resources on communication skills, and many of them are useful in some fashion or the other. I strongly recommend that you go online, that you look at YouTube videos, TikTok videos, read some articles, maybe buy a basic book on the topic. There's one called Communication Essentials for Dummies that I looked at, which does a decent job of walking you through some of the issues that you might encounter and gives you a sense of how you might be able to work through them. But here is what I want to do in the time that we have remaining. I will offer you a broad and a conceptual way to think about the communication process. And then I will talk to you a little bit about a set of skills that I think that you could usefully focus on in order to improve your communication skills in the short term. And finally, I want to offer you a few tips on how to get better at communication over the long term. Okay, so what is this thing called communication? One way to conceptualize it might be to think of the process of communication as a model. The process begins with a sender or a source who is seeking to communicate a particular message to a receiver, a command, a request, a question, an idea. So the sender first encodes the message. The typical encoding mechanism in verbal or written communication is the use of language, right? So you either use English or Telugu or Urdu or any language that you're familiar with, but one that you also know that your receiver is familiar with, right? And you encode your message in that specific language. There can be non-verbal forms of communication as well, but I'll talk about that in a second. So now this coded message is now transferred using a channel of communication. For instance, your voice, if you're talking to someone, an email to send a written message, an SMS to send an emoji, tapping the heart icon to like an Instagram post, etc. So at the other end, the receiver receives this message and has to decode it. In order for effective decoding, the receiver has to have the ability to understand your code. For instance, if you're speaking in Urdu to somebody, they have to be able to understand Urdu in order to receive your message, right? So this is the model you think about. Sender encodes the message, sends it over a channel of communication. The receiver receives this coded message and decodes it. Now, this whole process is impacted by something that is referred to as noise, which is basically any factor that distorts communication. You can think of noise literally. So if you're actually speaking to someone face-to-face in a crowded, busy, noisy environment, they might not be able to hear you clearly. Similarly, there are other factors that distort communication and meaning, right? So for example, the mood of the person receiving the message might change how they interpret it. How many times have you had to say to someone, "Mera matlab wo nahi tha," that's not what I meant. People can interpret anything you say in any way. Again, we know that. It happens particularly when we are using social media or text messages, where you don't have the ability to communicate fully. And people take what you're saying either out of context or they interpret it given their background with you, their own mood at the moment, what just happened to them recently, and so on and so forth. Right? तो किसी भी चीज का कोई भी मतलब निकाला जा सकता है. अगर आप किसी को कहें कि जनाब आपकी शेरवानी बड़ी अच्छी है, तो वो कह सकते हैं कि अच्छा, तो आपको मेरा पैजामा पसंद नहीं आया. So every human being has a very complex psyche. That's a mixture of their genetic material, their experiences, the choices that they have made in life, their personalities. Uh, we all have our own baggage and we view the world through our own lenses. And so different people have different emotional responses to different stimuli, such as words, pictures, sounds, gestures, which leads to major differences in the way communication is encoded, transmitted, received, and understood. So I use the following example when I talk to my students about this. So imagine this scenario. Okay, a father and his son are driving down the road in their car when they meet with an accident. Both of them are badly injured. The son needs to be operated on. So they're rushed to the closest hospital. The surgeon is summoned. The surgeon walks into the operating theater, looks at this child and says, I can't operate on this child. This is my son. How is this possible? And the simple answer to this is that the surgeon is the child's mother. But if this story produced some dissonance for a moment with you, that is, for a while you were thinking, कि ये कैसे हो सकता है? The father was driving with the son and was in an accident. How can the surgeon be the child's parent? That's because you are using a conceptual map in which the default surgeon in your mind is a man, right? That is what that dissonance shows. And the point that I want to make by telling you this is that we interpret reality and we construct meaning based on our own worldviews. When we talk about communication in dry technical terms, we are asking questions like, how can communication be made more accurate? How do communication breakdowns occur? How can we make sure that the message sent is the message that is received? What is the most appropriate medium through which to send messages? How do we reduce noise that distorts messages? And all this is important. But we should also recognize that communication is far more complex than all of this. Ironically, the more sophisticated our communication technologies have become, the more communication problems we seem to encounter. Also, communication is often just as importantly about what you don't say as about what you say, right? And often what you say is less important than how you say it. वो फैज अहमद फैज का एक शेर है कि वो बात सारे फसाने में जिसका जिक्र न था, वो बात उनको बहुत नागवार गुजरी है. So what I want you to understand is that communication is a complex process and that ambiguity is inherent in it, right? It cannot be avoided. Let me turn my attention to some of the skills that I think that you need to develop in order to get better at communication. And I'll focus on the ones that I think are the most important and try to give you some tips on how to improve those, both in the short run and in the long run. Okay. Now, if I ask you what you think is the most crucial, the most important communication skill of all, you might come up with a variety of responses: the ability to articulate your thoughts, the ability to tell an engaging story, the ability to hold the attention of your audience. But if you ask me, the most important skill you should cultivate in order to improve your communication skills, counterintuitively, is the ability to listen. When you find yourself in a social situation, look around and notice how few people have the capacity to actually and actively listen to someone, right? Most of the time, people are listening to somebody else speak in order to find the opportunity, the segue, the opening to say something themselves. So how do you do active listening? Well, first of all, let me tell you, it's not easy. How do you do active listening? How do you practice active listening? Well, learn to be mentally engaged. Focus on what is being said. Don't let your mind wander. आज रात डिनर में क्या है? कल वो फिल्म देखी थी, उसके बारे में सोच रहे हैं आप. Don't do that. Commit to the conversation. put aside your own thoughts. Now, this is easier said than done, right? Buddhists will tell you that we have a monkey mind, is what they call it. Mind constantly jumps from one thing to another. Try, for instance, to sit down for 30 seconds without thinking of anything at all. Just try this experiment and you'll find that it's next to impossible. And so paying attention to what somebody is saying is not easy. It doesn't come naturally to us, right? And when you're paying attention to them, try to be neutral and non-judgmental. Don't offer advice unless it is solicited. Try to put yourself in the other person's shoes. The idea is to see what they are saying from their point of view, not through your own lens. Yeah. Ask questions in order to clarify and understand, not to challenge or to argue. Don't interrupt. Don't cut them off. Don't invalidate their own experience or their feelings. Let them talk, right? Make a decision that this is about them and not about you. Yeah? Okay. Offer verbal and non-verbal feedback to show that you're being attentive. So nod, right? Respond with appropriate facial gestures. Make eye contact. Lean in, not too much, but do lean in. Mirror the other person's body language. Relax your own body. Open it up. Don't sit closed and tight. Don't sigh. Don't yawn. Don't look at your watch. Don't check your phone. Don't fiddle with things. Respond with affirmations. Say, I hear you. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm sorry to hear that. Right? Try to reflect back what they are saying by paraphrasing what they have just told you, not by parroting it, but by paraphrasing it. Be okay with silences. What all this adds up to basically is that you are engaging in you're proactively engaging in listening. Yeah. If there's one thing that you take away from this talk, let it be this: pay attention to your active listening skills. And the way to do that is to practice them consciously, right? So for example, every day you make a decision, okay, aaj main, I will have one active listening conversation. तो किसी से भी, अपनी माँ से, बाप से, भाई से, बहन से, दोस्त से, तरकारी वाले से, किसी से भी आप जो है decide कि I'm going to engage in active listening. You will find that it is far more difficult than you think it is. You know, but believe me, you will be surprised by the results, right? People who have the ability to actively listen to somebody else have a great advantage over the others. Okay. Here are some more pieces of, for want of a better word, advice that I can give you in terms of skills that I think you should try to cultivate. Be authentic, right? Know yourself, be true to yourself. Don't try to please others all the time. Don't pretend, front, fake, if you can help it. This is not to say that you shouldn't change over time or you shouldn't modulate your behavior depending upon the circumstances. We behave very differently, as we should, when we are with our elders than when we are with our friends. We behave differently in work settings than we do in everyday casual life. The idea behind authenticity is that you should learn to be comfortable in your own skin, right? An inauthentic life is an unhappy life. Yeah. Be confident. Say what you know what you don't know, and don't be embarrassed about that. Don't be embarrassed about not knowing things. Nobody knows everything, even if some people act as if they do. As a matter of fact, the more you learn, the more humble you get, because the more you learn, the more you realize how little you actually know. Yeah. All of you have worked very hard to be where you are, and you should take pride in that. What you have learned so far is the product of your own labor, your dedication, your struggles. Don't be shy about it. Yeah. Don't be embarrassed by what you don't know. And apropos of that, I want to say something, that the ability to speak English well, to be able to deploy an extensive vocabulary, to use what the French call le mot juste, that is the right word for the right occasion, to be able to articulate your thoughts fluently without hesitating, without making grammatical errors, without having these fillers like like, etc. in your speech patterns. All this is very important in today's Anglophone world. And often, unfortunately, your ability to speak English well is conflated with intelligence. But this is not necessarily the case. So I want to tell you that while you should make an effort to improve your spoken English, don't think of it as the be all and end all of it. And for God's sake, don't be ashamed of your own language. Yeah. Another skill that you should try and cultivate in order to get better at communication is empathy, right? The ability to share and understand the feelings of the other person. This goes hand in hand with active listening, but it is a little deeper than that. When you talk with anyone, show them respect, right? Actually believe, don't pretend, but actually believe that they have things to teach you, that you have things to learn from them, that they are a complex individual, even if it may be somebody who is, from a different background, a different class, a different place in the social hierarchy. Learn something about them that will allow you to honestly compliment them. Try to cultivate the ability to speak with clarity. Now, I know this sounds like a big thing, and you probably need to go and read something more about it elsewhere and understand what I mean. But basically what I'm saying is that if you are sharing information, try to be concise. If you're telling a story, let it not wander. Think of what you say as something that has a narrative arc. Yeah. And essentially, when you are speaking, particularly if you're speaking in any formal setting, make sure you know how your story is going to end. Make sure how your talk is going to end. Make sure how your speech is going to end. Make sure how your presentation is going to end. So your presentation of yourself should, and anything that you say should have a beginning, an ending, and an arc, and it should make a specific point. It should have a particular kind of a takeaway. Yeah, this is important. When we think about communication, we are often thinking about it as being something that's verbal, something that involves words. But you need to pay as much attention to non-verbal communication as you do to verbal communication. And non-verbal communication involves the exchange of information through non-linguistic means, right? Which means your tone of voice, your gestures, the eye contact that you make, your body language. So again, go online, look at some tools and try to figure out how you might be able to use the toolbox of your own voice to good effect. Don't think of your voice as just being a neutral channel for communicating words. Think of it as an instrument that you are going to manipulate, right? So think of your voice in terms of its register, its timbre, the pace at which you speak, the pitch at which you speak, the volume, what linguistics calls the prosody or the rhythm of your speech pattern. I'll give you a tip on how to work on it in a second. Pay attention to your personal appearance, right? When you are presenting yourself, think of yourself as an actor who is acting with their body, with their costume, with their voice. Yeah. So pay attention to your dress. Pay attention to things like your body odor. Use deodorants. Yeah. Don't use strong perfumes. Pay attention to your teeth. Make sure they're clean. Your nose. Yeah. Recognize that your gaze or eye contact or the gestures that you're making, your posture, your smile are all communicating. And whether you like it or not, people are reading them in particular ways. The Ralph Waldo Emerson had this line, which he said, "What you do speaks so loudly that I cannot hear what you say. What you do speaks so loudly that I cannot hear what you say." We respond emotionally to nonverbal messages. So if someone screams at you, you're more likely to scream back at them. If someone smiles at you, you're more likely to smile at them. So be aware that nonverbal messages are the primary ways in which we communicate feelings or attitudes. So be attentive to them, right? For example, nonverbal messages should not contradict what you're saying. This might sound very simple and intuitive to understand, but it's not always the case. You don't smile when you're giving someone bad news, for instance, right? And while this may be obvious in certain instances, it may not be so clear in others. Keep in mind that nonverbal messages are often ambiguous and culturally bound. So be aware of how you are coming across. Yeah? Despite living in the US for 30 years, I still haven't lost the Indian nod, which confuses the hell out of everyone here. They interpret it as a no. So I have to catch myself periodically and say, no, that's not a no. I meant to say yes. Now, all of these skills take time to develop. Yeah, but you can begin to implement them right away. However, becoming good at them takes time. Yeah. Skills take time to hone. If you want to learn how to play the guitar, you don't expect to become Jimi Hendrix overnight. You want to learn to play the piano, you don't expect to become a Mozart overnight. Similarly, communication is an art. Right? To become better at it, you need to practice. Practice, 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 practice. So what should you do to practice? Okay. First, read. And your reading should have a dual purpose. First, you should read so that you learn things. Make it a habit to read a newspaper. If you want a recommendation, I suggest that you read The Guardian from London. It's not behind a paywall. Apart from the fact that it is a very respected newspaper, the quality of writing in that paper is really high. Read as much as you can. Read what you enjoy and read things that will teach you things. The more you know, the better you will speak. The more you know, the more interesting you will be. Yeah. You have to know a lot more than you are talking about in order for you to sound competent at what you're doing and what you're saying. But the second purpose of reading is to learn the art of using words. Now, good writers are celebrated for a reason, right? There is a reason why we'll still read Ghalib or Mir Taqi Mir or William Shakespeare or Thomas Hardy, because these are people who are good at their craft. They are great at what they do. There is a lot to learn from them. And fiction and poetry has the ability to speak certain truths in a deep way. There is this beautiful share by Ghalib, which says, देखना तकरीर की लज्जत के जो उसने कहा, देखना तकरीर की लज्जत के जो उसने कहा, मैंने ये जाना कि गोया ये भी मेरे दिल में है. Which means that the beauty of expression unveils something that already resides in your own heart. So there's a deep truth that you didn't recognize until something you read opened it up to you. I think that at some point in time, I was asked to come up with a list of material that you could read in this context. And I believe that it is up on the website of our organization. We'll send you a link and you can There's just some recommendations on the short stories and novels and other forms of literature that you could read to help you along this path. The second thing I would recommend is that you write. Yeah, keep a journal. That will force you to express what you're saying in words, and it will be recorded in a way that you can revisit and examine and see whether or not you have done a good job of actually communicating what it is that you're feeling. Yeah. But it's much deeper than that as well. Yeah. Very often people will tell you that you don't know what you think until you write it down. You yourself don't know what you think until you write it down. So my strong recommendation is keep a journal. Yeah. You don't have to feel compelled to write in it every single day, although that will be good if you could do that. But keep something that you can write in periodically. And the third and the final broad tip that I will leave you with is that practice communicating in a formal way with your friends. Practice it with a mirror, practice it with a recorder, practice it with a camera. Don't be shy about this. You have to be able to know and be able to notice and examine yourself from a distance in order to be able to critique yourself and to figure out where there might be opportunities for improvement. Yeah. Communication is a skill, and like all of the skills, the more you work on it, the better you will get. All right. I hope you found this useful. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to try and answer them as best as I can.
Amir, are you there? Amirullah Khan, sir.
जी, एक क्वेश्चन यहाँ पे है, have you read the book Principles by Ray Dalio? जी नहीं, I have not read it, although I'm familiar with Ray Dalio and his magar. If you can ask me what the question is leading up to, maybe I might be able to answer it better. Basharat Bhai, can I just go ahead and read the questions on the chat and try to address them as I can?
Yeah, please go ahead.
You don't have to necessarily just write it up in a chat. If you want to unmute yourself and ask me questions directly, that might be fine too. Yeah,
I think that's preferred.
Yeah,
they'll get a chance to speak.
Ji, so I'm poor at grammatical mistake. Could you help me out, please? I mean, the answer to that is the same as the answer to any other question about how do you learn to get better at something. You have to work at it. You have to learn, you have to practice, you have to train yourself. Either you train yourself or you find somebody who can train you in it. There's plenty of material in terms of how you can improve your grammar. I mean, you need to pick up a book and read it, a book on grammar and read it. And if that is beyond you at the moment, because you don't have the time for that kind of an effort, what I'm saying in the context of reading is what will have a great impact on your own ability to improve your grammatical skills. Read these things that I'm talking to you about. read the newspaper, read the Guardian newspaper. They don't make grammatical errors. And if you read it regularly, you will internalize a few things. Like you will notice that they construct sentences in a way that may be different from how you would have constructed them. That gives you a hint that maybe you have been doing it inappropriately. These are things that, look, I have been trying to learn Spanish because Spanish is the second language of the United States. That's the second most widely spoken language in this country. And I've been taking classes for the last couple of years. Once a week, 3 hours in a classroom, homework every week. And I'm nowhere near being fluent. I can barely speak in three tenses. This takes time. In the meantime, don't be discouraged. The problem comes up when you start thinking कि भाई मेरी ग्रामर तो बहुत वीक है and I need to fix it, and then हफ्ते भर के बाद आप कह रहे हैं कि अभी तक मेरी ग्रामर ठीक नहीं हुई. नहीं होगी. You know, be patient and play this as the long game, right? You don't have to become fluent in English by the time you graduate or by the time you go for your jobs. This skill is something that is going to hold you in good stead over your lifetime. So think of it as a skill that you will develop over your lifetime, right? There's no end point that you want to get to. You don't want to become a grammarian by a particular date. You just need to improve yourself bit by bit, by bit by bit. Just ask yourself, am I better today than I was yesterday? And that should be satisfaction enough, right? In the meantime, I strongly recommend that you don't feel embarrassed about your poor grammar. Often होता ये है कि you judge yourself and you think कि भाई मेरी grammar तो बहुत weak है and therefore I'm going to shut up. Yeah, otherwise people will make fun of me or people will think that I'm a fool. Don't do that, right? Like I said, develop a certain sense of confidence in yourself, understand who you are, be authentic, and don't be embarrassed about yourself. I mean, the person who asked the question, I'm sure you have struggled a lot in life. I'm sure that you have worked very hard to get where you are. Think about all your achievements, think about the odds that you have fought against, and think of this as your next challenge, right? I think that's very important. I can say a lot more about it, but I think a bunch of other questions have come up. Let me just see if I can. जी कोई बोल रहा है?
Well, how can we open ourselves in communication? If we are shy in communicating with someone, so how can we remove that shyness?
तो एक और यहाँ पे दानिश का एक सवाल है कि डर लगता है अंदर ही अंदर रिजल्ट क्या होगा अगर अपने को जज करेंगे. तो how do you remove your shyness? देखिए, डर तो सभी को लग सकता है. मैं अमेरिका में 30 साल 30 years. I've been teaching in classrooms for 30 years. I teach students who are much younger than me now, obviously. I teach students who don't know nearly as much about the topic that I'm teaching. I'm the expert. And yet, believe me, each time I walk into a classroom, I feel a certain sense of nervousness, a mild sense of nervousness about walking into that classroom and speaking in front of this group of people. I've come here to talk to you. Before I began my talk, I felt a certain sense of nervousness. वो personality की बात भी होती है. There are some people who feel that way, some people who don't, right? I have known people personally in my life who have been fabulous public speakers, who address crowds of hundreds and thousands, and yet they confess to feeling nervous. तो डर लगता है तो लगने दीजिए. शाय फील कर रहे हैं तो कीजिए. I should say this, that there are some people who have so much stage fright that they just cannot do it. You know, it's beyond their capability. अगर बंदूक भी उन्हें दिखाएं तो वो शायद ना कर पाएं. I do have students who come and tell me, I just cannot make a class presentation. I'm sorry, I cannot. You know, it'll stress me out too much. If that is the case, then that's the case. You know, you can't push yourself. But in general, the sense of shyness comes out of a few things. One is a lack of full preparation. You know, so if you know that you have to do something, if you know it ahead of time, write it out, practice it a few times. That might help. Place yourself in situations where you have to do this over and over again. You know, look out for opportunities to put yourself in such a situation. Again, let me use my example of speaking Spanish. So those who learn how to speak the language best or fastest are people who go and take immersive classes. I haven't been able to do that, but people take immersive classes. So hota ye hai ki they go to Mexico or some Spanish speaking country and stay in a place where the only language that they can speak is Spanish. You know, their host families speak Spanish, their professors only talk to them in Spanish. Mahalle mein, shahar mein log sirf Spanish bolte hain. So you force yourself, you put yourself in a situation where you are compelled to do that which you don't feel like doing. Look, there's a natural inclination that we have to avoid situations which make us uncomfortable. You know, nothing wrong with that. We do that all the time, and with good reason. Why should we put ourselves in uncomfortable situations? But the greatest learning happens when you make yourself do that, which is why I am saying that try things out in low stake situations. Low stake. I mean, I'm not asking you to go out in front of a crowd of people and regale them with a, you know, beautiful speech. आप अपने कमरे में अकेले फोन का कैमरा ऑन कीजिए. Tell yourself, you know, give yourself a question. Let's say somebody tells you, tell me something about yourself. अपने आप के बारे में कुछ बताइए. तो आप क्या कहेंगे? अब आप इसका जवाब अंग्रेजी में दीजिए अपने फोन के सामने. And you record it. And then you watch it. And then you will notice that maybe you didn't have anything interesting to say, not because you don't have an interesting life. Who doesn't have an interesting life? But because you're unable to articulate it. You may realize that your sentences peter out, you don't complete them. You may realize that आप बहुत सारे extraneous sounds या अल्फाज इस्तेमाल करते हैं. Do it again. Watch it again. Do it a third time. Do it a fourth time. Do it a fifth time. Do it 100th time. You know? So put yourself in low stake situations. And then start becoming a little more ambitious. Maybe do it with friends. Say कि तुम और मैं बैठ के we are going to engage in a particular conversation, formal conversation, which we are going to record. You know, maybe you don't have to do it on camera. Maybe you can just record it, just the audio of it. Listen to it. Both of you sit down and listen to it. Realize what you did or didn't do. Active listening जो मैं कह रहा था, practice that too formally. Record कीजिए. किसी से कहिए कि अपनी माँ से कहिए कि मैं आपके साथ active listening practice करना चाहता हूँ. I'm recording something. Then listen back to the conversation. When I was in my PhD program, I took a course on qualitative research and the art of the long interview. And for that, I had to go and talk to somebody for an hour and a half or longer. And I had to transcribe the entire interview. I had to type it all up. And then I had to look at it and critique myself and say, कि यहाँ उसने वो कहा, and I didn't pick up on it. They said something that was important, but I was busy formulating my next question, or I was not paying attention. So you critique yourself. Look, I'm going to say this again. This is a skill. It's a skill. जैसा मैंने आपसे कहा कि if you want to learn how to play the guitar, आपको गिटार की ABC नहीं आती, आपको किसी ने गिटार थमा दिया, आप कल जाके स्टेज पे तो नहीं बजाएंगे ना. लेकिन कुछ तो सीख पाएंगे आज आप, कल शायद उससे ज्यादा कुछ सीख लेंगे. So that is, so I'm repeating it again. Okay, do not think of this as something which you have to master in the next few days or the next few weeks or the next few months. Think of it as a multi-year project. And if you start working on it today, maybe 5 years from now, you may not have these problems. You may not have these issues. Don't put the pressure on yourself to become a fantastic communicator tomorrow. Don't do that. लीजिए भाई 5 साल लीजिए 10 साल लीजिए. In the meantime, learn some specific things that you need. For example, interviewing skills, right? So go online, pick up something that tries to teach you how to be better at interviewing. Learn things that are instrumental to you right now, and then work off that. But think of it as a long-term project. Yeah. How can I get more confidence when I'm speaking to my boss, teachers, etc.? Look, what is confidence? Confidence is, when are you most confident in life? When are you most confident? Well, you're most confident in life when you are speaking about something that you know very well, right? If you talk to me, for example, about Urdu poetry of the 20th century, I don't mind talking to you about it at all. I'm not going to be nervous about it because I know a lot about it. Right? So I can talk to you with confidence because I know. I'm grounded in something that I know. अच्छा, तो फर्ज कीजिए आप मुझसे पूछे कि भाई उस शायर के बारे में आपका क्या ख्याल है. जैसा किसी ने भी मुझसे पूछा कि रे डालियो की किताब का नाम भी मुझे याद नहीं, प्रिंसिपल्स बाय रे डालियो, आपने पढ़ी है क्या? नहीं पढ़ी है मैंने. I don't know anything about it. If I said हाँ पढ़ी थी, अब आप उसके बारे में you ask me a follow-up question and I don't know, I'll be very unconfident. Even if I can fake things well, I'll be very unconfident. Confidence comes from knowing what you know and knowing what you don't know. That's very important. It's vital to know what you don't know and to be okay with it. And the other thing that I had also said, which is be comfortable in your own skin. I am who I am. I'm not going to be a different person from who I am, Having said that, I do admit that when you're speaking to somebody with a power differential over you, somebody who's your boss, somebody who has the ability to reward or punish, somebody who you respect, somebody who you think of very highly, there is a certain nervousness that comes out of it. An imbalance of power will always create that. Be aware of that, accept it. You won't be able to talk to a boss the same way that you can talk to a peer or to a subordinate. Fine, accept that. But know what you know what you don't know, and be okay with it. Yeah. अच्छा, मैं जो है काफी चीजें पता है जिससे अपने को अच्छा कर सकते हैं, बट करते नहीं. भाईजान दानिश साहब, डर लगता है और वो चीज फेस नहीं करना चाहते, वो फेलियर, इसको कैसे टैकल करें? इसका तो मैं शायद जवाब दे चुका हूँ. अच्छा, अरशान asks me to repeat. खाफ और खे में है क्या फर्क, हमें क्या मालूम, हम ज़बां अपनी चलाने को ज़बां कहते हैं. Is it permissible to use poetry or quotations in formal meetings? I don't know. I mean, you'll have to make that judgment yourself. It may be okay in some places, it may not be okay in others. Okay. On what I want to give IELTS exam. मुझे पता नहीं क्या exam होता है भाई.
ये English language test card exam होता है. So that's okay. That question we can take later. But it's like any other exam. It's like the TOEFL exam.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So Professor Mirali Hussain, there are some questions that are not on the chat box,
Okay.
and so a lot of our students here find it very difficult to correct their grammar. Their grammar when they write, they're very hesitant to write or speak because they think that they are going to make grammatical mistakes, and that is going to be where that is when hell is going to break loose for them. So what do you have to say about making silly or trivial mistakes? Does it matter?
No, it doesn't matter, because what can you do about it? If that's what you know, then that's what you know to do. Don't be worried about it. I know it's easier said than done, but here's what I'll say. As far as your written communication is concerned, there are tools now out there that will allow you to correct your grammar. So here's what I'm going to say. पहले तो आप जो है, when you write something to somebody, don't send it right away. Email लिखें या text लिखें, don't send it right away. उस पे पहले गौर करें आप. Have I done this accurate well enough? There's an online tool called Grammarly, which I think is baked into many programs now. Gmail mein hai, and Microsoft Word has a grammar tool, and they're getting better all the time. So especially when you're doing formal communication, run your material through a grammar and a spell check. Pay attention to it before you send it. I think that's vital. I would encourage you to do that even in informal communication. Texts अपने दोस्तों को कर रहे हैं, WhatsApp कर रहे हैं, on listservs, etc. Spend some time looking at what you have written. In other words, start being conscious of paying attention to your own output before you send it out into the world. And in many ways, this is what I've been saying. What I'm asking you to do is, if you want to learn how to get better at it, start being conscious of it. Start paying attention to it. And the flip side of the question is that you do what you can do. You learn what you can learn. And then you let go of the rest. Don't let it embarrass you. Don't let it bother you. Don't let it define you. Don't be embarrassed by it. Don't be ashamed by it.
That's very well said. Actually, that gives the cue for the next question, which was that some of us are very worried about our pronunciations. Are we saying it the right way? Should we say America? Should we say America? How does one tackle that? Is the accent and the pronunciation something that we need to correct? And if yes, how do we do that?
So, I mean, ideally, yes. Ideally, you should be able to speak in a manner that allows you to be understood completely. And then there is the other part of it, which I talked about, which is whether we like it or not, our ability to communicate fluently is used as a proxy for gauging our abilities and our intelligence. It's unfortunate, but we live in an Anglophone world, especially in the workplace. People speak in English. It's the lingua franca of the business world across the globe. And so the ability to speak English with a certain command is a skill that is very, very useful. And I strongly urge us to pay attention to it. But again, let me just ask you to be gentle with yourself, to think of it as a multi-year project, and to take your time over it.
Here is a very interesting question, that in this day and age, when the US has been ravaged by Trump and COVID, should we, in grad school, continue to think of moving to the US? How? So the question really is that, does the US still invite foreigners? Is it still open for? Is it still that land of opportunity that it used to be? This is outside the syllabus.
I'm not sure if this
this is clearly outside the syllabus today, but it's an interesting question.
Communication. But I will answer that question. I mean, I think it's a fair question to ask. I mean, if you have the opportunity to come to the US for grad school, then do come. Yeah. As opposed to what? As opposed to staying back in India, you can always go back. If you have the opportunity to come here, come. I mean, does this country have more opportunities than other countries? Yeah, I think so. It's a wealthy country, and it continues to be a wealthy country. Things are not as easy as they used to be in terms of being able to get a green card or being able to settle down here. But the opportunity to come here, especially if it doesn't come at a great cost, I think is worth taking. Yeah.
Thanks. Especially for most people in India right now, it's a very, very difficult crossroad that most of our students are seeing. It's becoming difficult to stay in India. It's becoming difficult to leave, and that's why I thought that this was a question that you could answer. And it's good that you say so. And I really like to repeat it for all of you youngsters, that, while yes, India is a large economy, it used to be a very fast growing economy at one time, but, you have to go out there and see the world and come back. And hopefully things won't stay the way they are right now. Come back as soon as you can. But back to communication. I know that we are running out of time. We've already taken more than an hour of your time, Professor Hussain. But the question that again remains is, or one of the questions that keeps coming back whenever we discuss the communication issue, is a question that Amreen has asked here, which is that you are speaking fluently and you forget what you wanted to say. You get, for whatever reason. How does one retrieve that situation? Suddenly there's a question that's asked and you know the answer, but you're unable to say it. So what do you do in that case?
So the reason why you might be unable to recall or forget what to say is that either you're nervous or you're speaking about something that you don't know enough. Yeah, one of the two things. The solution to it is in the question itself. Speak about things that you know. Don't talk about something that you don't know enough about. And in order to speak about something, you have to know far more about it than you say. If you only know two things about something, and you say, "Okay, मैं बस वो दो चीजें बोलने वाला हूँ," that's not enough. That's not impressive. You have to have a body of knowledge from which you're extracting small things. This is what allows you to make connections. Be able to speak in a way that gives the impression that you actually know what you're talking about. So yes, so read, train yourself, talk about things that you know, don't talk about things that you don't know. The second reason why this can happen is nervousness. I still recall my father taking me to participate in a debate, and midway through the debate, through my speech, which I had written down and memorized, I forgot. My mind went blank. It was one of the most mortifying moments of my life, Nervousness can do a lot to you. How do you combat that? Well, practice. Put yourself through these situations. And again, I know I'm repeating myself, but start with low stakes situations. Not much will happen. I mean, your nervousness is compounded if the consequences are greater. You're speaking in front of 200 people. You're far more nervous than you will be if you're speaking to a friend. And so take yourself up that learning curve. First speak with nobody around, then speak with just some friends around. Practice. I mean, really, there's no other answer to these questions. There's no other answer to this question.
Absolutely. I think
you have to put in the work. Okay. Pick up any biography of any person who's been successful at anything. Sports, academia, writing. Pick up any autobiography. Read. You will find, yes, there are varying levels of talent that people have, circumstances that have compelled people to become who they are. But there is a common thread to all of those stories. They put in the work. Nobody is successful without putting in the work. Put in the work. Carve out time. You want to become a better communicator? Put in the work. Find time in your day to do what I'm asking you to do. Practice your active listening skills. Start reading. Start keeping a journal. Start recording yourself. You don't put in the work, you're not going to get better at it. I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. Mojiza nahi hone wala hai. You have to make the effort.
Absolutely.
But when you make the effort, don't have unrealistic expectations. Don't set standards for yourself that are unrealistic. Look, we have been through a goal setting exercise in this class, in this program as well. Right? Goals work as long as they are realistic and challenging. There should be things that you can achieve, but it should require effort. You can't set a goal that is, I'm going to walk 500 steps a day. That's no goal. But you can't say I'm going to walk 50,000 steps a day. That's not realistic. Set yourself goals that are achievable and that are realistic, and then put in the work. कोई जादू की पुड़िया तो है नहीं मेरे पास जो मैं आपको दे सकता हूँ कि भाई ये नुस्खा है, ये आप सुबह में नाश्ते से पहले खा लें और you will become a great communicator.
Yeah, thanks so much. That is very clear that it is really about practice and hard work. We'll now come towards the last question. This has been really a fabulous discussion. The question that a few people are asking in various ways. So I'm getting a lot of questions together in one, and that is that we are born and bred in an environment where we are expected to be very polite. In India, we sir all the time and touch people's feet all the time. And you're forever worried about getting people upset, angry, of giving an opinion that is counter to the opinion that you have. So I'm sitting there, I'm talking to you, you're my boss or you're my interviewer, and I get a feeling that what I'm saying is not what you agree with. What should I do in that situation? Should I continue to offer my opinion? Should I hold on to what I believe in? Or should I go back to being polite and be politically correct or whatever? How does one handle those kind of situations?
It's a tough question, and I don't think that there is a answer that works across all situations. You might figure out that there are certain situations where you should back off. I know that India is a very overtly subservient society. Hierarchies. There was a Dutch anthropologist who conducted this study in which he kind of measured something called power distance within countries. And the idea is that there are power differentials between layers of society, but how do they manifest themselves? How overt are they? So, for example, in the United States, when you go to a restaurant, you speak to your waiter, server with respect. You speak to the taxi driver with respect. You call your boss by their first name. When I first came to the university here, I had trouble with the fact that my professors expected me to refer to them by their first name. So the United States is a society where power distance, at least in overt situations, is limited. Whereas in India, it's quite the other way around. Very high power distance society. Gert Hofstede is the name of the anthropologist, if you want to look it up. It's a very well-established theory. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that if people expect subservience, then they'll be upset if they don't get it. So you need to figure out what the appropriate behavior is. But I want to kind of counter that as well by saying, be authentic. That's the only answer that you have in life. You can't control things beyond a certain level. Be authentic, be who you are. Don't be embarrassed about who you are. Be willing to make a stand, even if it means that you pay a price for it. Don't second guess yourself. Once you've made a decision, stick to it. Again, these are like platitudes in a certain way. I think that the response will depend upon the situation. You will have to make a judgment call. And sometimes you'll be wrong, and it's too bad. You do the best you can, you live with the consequences. That should be a rule of life. You think something through, you make a decision, you act on that decision, and then you live with the consequences. You don't go back and say, "Arey, kash main ye nahi karta." Learn from it, sure, so that the next time you encounter it. But don't be consumed by regret. Yeah.
That certainly wasn't platitudes. That was really, very clear. That you have to own your decisions and live with them and be as authentic as you can. So that is really wonderful, and that is as plain as it can be. So with this, I would like to thank Professor Mirali Hussain, who is a very, very dear and old friend of mine. Thank you for sparing your time, and not just for giving this talk, but also for so clearly and so easily understanding the various doubts and problems that most of our youngsters go through, with that sensitivity that was very clear in almost everything that you said. I hope that all of you have learned the very simple, straightforward advice that was given to you. In short, it was that you have to work hard. There is no other way. You have to practice all the time. You set your benchmarks reasonably and realistically. Don't be harsh on yourself. These are very simple things. And then be a man enough or woman enough to handle your mistakes and the problems that come. If you do that, then that's your answer, and you will all be as successful as Amir Ali Hussain. So thank you so much, Hussain.
My pleasure. And I don't know all of you personally, but I wish you the very best in life. If you have any specific questions that you've been unable to ask, feel free to send them to me by email, and I will do my best to answer them. And in the chat, if I may, there was one comment that said, "A few lines in Spanish, please."
Yes,
So,
yes.
I mean, ordinarily, I might have dodged that, but looking at the Palestinian resistance reminded me of a proverb that I learned in my my Spanish class. It's a Mexican proverb. So I'll just maybe end with that. And the proverb goes, quisieron enterrarnos, pero se les olvidó que somos semillas. That is, they tried to bury us, but they forgot that we were seeds.
Wow, brilliant. Brilliant. And that applies not just to Palestine but to most parts of the world today, unfortunately. Thank you so much again on behalf of CETI, our platform, of Basharat Bhai, who's the guiding force behind this. And we will hope to have this session again when we have a new set of mentees. To all of you who joined this scintillating program today, thank you all so much for having joined in. And as Hussain promised, if you have any questions or doubts, please continue to write to any one of us, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. So, Hussain, thank you again.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Good luck, everybody. Thank you for your patience. I hope it was worth your time.
Okay, so see you then till we come and meet you in the next program.
Inshallah.
Please do let us know. Khuda Hafiz. Thank you very much, all of you. Good night and good morning and whatever the time is. Basharat Bhai, thank you very much.
Thanks, Amir. Thanks, Amir Saab. Wonderful. And we had good attendance.
Thank you,
Wonderful.
Basharat.
Absolutely.
Khuda Hafiz.
Khuda Hafiz.